Okay, okay. We're rolling. We're rolling. Woo. Brake. Okay, we got a brake. Whoa. Whoa. On a previous episode of the mini chopper build, we got this motor that had been sitting for a long time, cleaned out the fuel system, and got it running. Choke on. Next, we swapped out our little 12-inch front wheel for this 16-inch wheel from Tractor Supply. Big upgrade for sure. Next, I ended up replacing this little dinky front peg mount that held our Mongoose BMX pegs in order to prepare for a foot brake build, which we also did on this last episode where we cut out a pedal or a lever out of the plasma cutter and then fabricated a spot for our master cylinder and got all of that stuff working so that we are almost ready to have a working rear brake. In this episode, we got to work on the rear wheel so we can actually put a brake rotor and finish that up and take it for a test ride. Next thing we need to do is we need to make the caliper bracket for this. The rotor bracket. So we need to get the rotor mounted to here and then get the caliper mounted off of the frame. But first, actually, what I need to do is I need to take this wheel out of here and I need to get it centered and make some proper spacers for it, because right now you can see, look at this spacer, you know, it's, you know, not even slightly square. So we need to make some proper spacers. It's not as crucial, but I do need to get a bolt. I want to put a real a bolt in here, not just this axle with a cotter key going through it or something. So, and then I also need to probably just go ahead and cut this piece off because our sprocket is probably not going to fit on there. I guess we could try it once we get the wheel off, but I don't think it's anywhere close to working. I don't think so. We'll see. But I probably want to make a new one anyways, because it had these big, it had lug nuts spacing it out. So I might end up, and that's one of the next things we need to do after we get the brake figured out, is figure out this drive system. And I might actually try to, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm going to do something though, but the sprocket is, the mounting flange is not even out far enough to mount the sprocket. So stuff has to happen. But first, we need to get this wheel centered in here. There isn't going to be anything other than a spacer over here, so we need to make sure that we get a good spacer over here and get this thing exactly centered in the bike, because it is not. It's actually currently this way, I believe. You can actually, I can tell just by looking that this spacer is quite a bit bigger than this spacer. So let's get that handled. All right, so the other night I finished making the spacers for this wheel. We put brand new bearings in the wheel, and I made these spacers perfect on the lathe to way greater tolerance or nicer tolerance than it needed to be. But then I put this on here and I went ahead and gave it a spin, and look how wobbly it is. So that is a big problem. So bottom line, I'm trying to figure out what exactly is bent here. One thing, in order to mount this sprocket and this brake properly, this hub, or yeah, I guess you call it the hub, whatever, this tube that runs through the wheel actually could stand to be a lot wider, and that would give me a place to actually weld the weld the sprocket without having to use, and the rotor without having to use some weird spacers, because the rotor needs to be clear out probably about right here. And then this caliper will actually, I can make it so it would literally bolt right to this axle mount, whatever you want to call it. So if we could get that out there, yeah, so that's about it's about a ½ an inch from where it is. So we kind of need to add a piece of tube here, or we need to replace this tube in the middle. Bottom line is I need to take this apart. I need to take the tire off the wheel. I need to see what about the wheel is bent and if it can be fixed, and if I could maybe cut this center tube out and add in a longer tube and weld it back together and actually have it be straight. So we need to figure out what exactly is bent, and then if I can't fix it, then I need to go looking for a replacement. So obviously I'd rather just fix it if I can, if it's easy, if it's going to be something crazy. But you know, I don't really know. To me it feels like the rim itself is bent, but I don't know what that means. I don't know if that means that if the rim is bent on this axle, or if it's just bent, like, I don't know. We got to figure out how it's bent. So let's take this thing back apart, and I'm going to have to take this tire off of here, and we're going to have to figure it out. Alright, so it's been a few days. Thanksgiving happened. I ended up ordering a couple wheels. So I think I went to BMI Parts. They had some good deals, and they had the wheels I was looking for, or something I was looking for. So this is a wheelbarrow wheel. I'm 99% sure that's what this is. And it's very, very narrow. I think we said it was like 2 3/4 or something. Yeah, maybe. No, it's more like 2 1/2. So I got a couple. This one is really cool. It was $5. It was on clearance, and I just couldn't pass it up, even if I don't use it for here, which I'm not going to. I've decided. It's kind of an interesting one. It's got a big center bore, so it's got for a bigger bearing, and it's got this pretty big flange on here, and it's actually pretty heavy duty. So it's not going to work for what we're doing here without a ton of modification. So we're not going to use that one unless we screw this one up. So I got this guy here. This is a 6 by, yeah, like 3 1/2, 3 1/4. I would say 3 1/4. 6 by 3 1/4. And then this one I think is actually more like, I said 2 1/2, but it's more like 2 1/4. So we're basically gaining an inch of width here, which I think will fit very nicely, and it'll fit this tire, our tire, pretty good. Problem is, none of these are going to work the way they are, because I've got to put a brake rotor. Like, this is it's got a really short nub on this side and then a longer one on this side, but neither of them stick out. This one would have kind of worked because it had the stick out, but it actually needed more. So, you know, what we're going to do, ultimately, I need to do some measuring here, but ultimately what we're going to do is I'm going to cut this center tube out of here, out of this wheel on the lathe, and I'm going to cut down this piece of tubing. It's a 1/4 inch wall, 1 5/8. It fits these 5/8 bearings that are in here perfectly. It's not like a super tight fit, but it's a snug fit, which works just fine. And we're going to cut this down so it fits to what we want, and we have room to put the brake rotor and our sprocket flange on here, which we need to make both of those too. But so we're going to cut this down. We're going to cut the center out of this and make it fit this piece of tubing, which is a little bit bigger than what's in here, so it should work out fine, I hope. But it's kind of just trial and error, and we're just going to throw this thing in the lathe, and we're going to try and cut this tube out of here as good as we can and try to make a nice concentric, or perfect circle in there, so we can slide this in here and get it welded up. I do need to take this and go ahead and cut this down as well, though. And then we can also throw this in the lathe and take a little bit off of it to smooth it out and make it fit this a little bit better. But that's the plan. So I need to do a little bit of measuring. I need to make sure of what I want here for the width on this, and then we'll go over to the lathe. We'll knock these bearings out first, and then we'll go over to the lathe, and we will try to cut this tube out of here as good as we can. So that is the plan. All right, let's see what we can do here. What's up? All right, so we got the we got that machined out of there. It was easier than I thought it was going to be. Well, I mean, it was kind of difficult with some of the tooling I got. I got crappy tooling, but anyways, so we got that. This side is super tight. The other side has a little bit of play in it, so we're going to end up tacking this side and then trying to figure out, you know, where it is nice and spin it and try to figure out as straight as it is. This thing isn't perfect. But it'll be close enough. What else? Oh yeah, I made new spacers. It's actually offset. I wanted to give myself some more room to push the sprocket over as far as I can and still clear. So I could push this, so I can move some of this stuff over. And on this side, I needed more clearance for the brake. So we got like a 3/4 inch spacer over here and a 1/2 inch spacer over here. So, but I got the wheel centered in there. And we're going to go ahead and I'm going to MIG weld this just because it's going to be way easier and it's probably going to look better than trying to TIG it and get in the TIG torch in there. It's going to be a pain in the butt. So we're going to grab the MIG welder and we are going to tack it, and then we're going to try and center it and make it as straight as possible, and then we're going to spin the wheel and weld it up. No! Blew a damn hole in it. It was looking perfect. Not too much heat. Show you guys the other side. The other side turned out really nice. Not bad. This side looked really good until you got to there, so I gotta try and fix that. But this is the sprocket side actually, so you won't even see it. The sprocket, look how big this sprocket is compared to the wheel. It's a little bit bigger than the wheel, so it'll be out here. You won't even be able to see that. But I'm gonna clean it up anyways, take a little die grinder to it, make it look a little better. See if we can get these bearings out of here. They look like they're a little hot. Probably if I would have let it cool off between welding this side, probably would have not had as much heat and been able to burn it in. But I mean, it was set about perfect. I mean, obviously it would have been a little better if it was cooler and it didn't burn through. But I mean, that weld is just flat. Penetration is excellent. So that's a bummer. But we'll fix it. So now we got our wheel done. I cleaned up that big goober on there, and we need to make 2 flanges. And I told you guys before, I'm struggling with the plasma table to make something clean enough for that. So I'm gonna have to make these 2 flanges by hand. So yeah, I'm going to work on that. I'm basically going to trace this out so I can get all the holes in the right places. And then, you know, center punch. I got the center punches for these center punches for the holes. And then I'm going to have to figure out a way to get the right diameter tube in there, which is this guy right here. Make sure that I get that guy completely centered. So I'm gonna have to do a bunch of measuring and marking and all that stuff and to get this thing right. But we're gonna do it right. We're gonna make them perfect, or as perfect as we can, and then we'll have those two to put on the wheel, and then we'll finally be making some progress on this wheel issue. So I'm gonna get to it. Alright, I made some progress on this and I want to show you guys where I'm at. I've got my flanges, or my... Whoa, jeez, I just lost the brake caliper. Okay, so I got my flanges done, and they turned out really good. And I got hardware, and I got the sprocket bolted on, and I got the brake disc bolted on. And what I'm working on right now is the brake mount itself. So this brake disc is super small, so it's causing me some problems. So I'm having to do a little bit of clearancing here, and I'm actually going to take this part right here, was where a bolt came through, and there wasn't enough room to basically put a bolt in here and do all this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to weld this part right here to this spacer. So that'll be part of that, and then there'll be one bolt hole, so it'll work like this. So bam, you can see how that sits in that little pocket right there, and then we'll have one bolt right up here near this finger, and that'll be it right there. I mean, that's pretty much it. And then the bottom will be stabilized by being welded to that axle spacer there, and it'll be one thing. It'll be, I think it's going to work out really good. So that is the plan. So I need to fire up the welder at this point. I need to get that piece sorted out, and I'm going to have to take this wheel off and get this other bolt hole marked and get that drilled. And then I'll be able to actually clamp the brake down on the disc to help straighten it. And then we'll get that tacked in, and we'll make sure it's straight, which is way not straight right now. But basically, by spinning the disc, or having this clamped on there and spinning it, it should straighten it out, and then we'll get it welded on there. And then the same thing over here, except we're not going to have something to clamp it on. I need to put a chain on here and make sure it's going to clear everything. And then I have my dial indicator here, which I'm going to use to basically make sure that this is straight. So I'll put it on here, we'll put it up against here, and once we find our sweet spot where we want it, we'll rotate it around and make sure that it is square, and that's going to run true. And then we'll be able to put our tire on and ride this thing soon, hopefully. But for now, yep, let's get this brake finished fabricated on here, and then we'll just keep going down until we, until we have something to ride. Alright, so we got our wheel welded up, or we got our flanges welded up. There's that one, and then this one. It is time to go ahead and just put the tire back on. Got to put a new valve stem in it, and put this whole back end together finally. It's been a ton of work to get to this point, multiple days, because you only have a few hours of time here and there. So point where we can run this thing. I don't have a brake hose yet, but I just want to see this thing turn over and turn the wheel. So I haven't started this in a week or so. See if it starts. I'll turn the gas on. Hopefully it don't jump off the table. Likes the chain. The tire. It's part of it is the tire, because yeah. It really wants to warm up. It doesn't like this this cold. Hey, it works. It works.
Hooray.
The belt is slipping a lot.
That's loose as shit.
It's super loose. That's as far as the motor goes forward. Okay, so the only thing left to sort out really before we take this thing for a test ride, probably a very sketchy test ride, is to get a hose to go from the master cylinder to the caliper and probably replace that belt with a new one so we can get more grip off of it, or do something with this chain. I'm not really sure yet, but I'm thinking, I don't know, I'm gonna figure it out. And then next time you see this, we're gonna be riding it. Alright guys, this thing is ready to ride for our first test ride. I got a janky axle bolt here because it's too long. I tried to cut threads on it, and I'm just gonna go get the right bolt. But for now, we're gonna run that. We got our brake hose, temporary brake hose as well. We'll get something that fits better. Right now it's just kind of looping up, and we got this thing just zip tied here, but we got brakes. Yeah, other than that, I imagine this is going to be super sketchy to ride. It's very cold outside. But it is time to take it for a ride and see how it does. So I'm gonna slap my helmet on and we're gonna see how this thing feels. Well, this thing isn't running that great, but we're gonna do some work on it, so I'm not too worried. It wants to run on choke just fine, but it doesn't want to run off the choke that well. So it's also really cold, so okay. We're rolling. Woo. Brake. Okay, we got a brake. Whoa. That's what I thought. Going down the driveway is going to be the sketchiest part. This whole ride here. Woo. Alright. It's a little sketchy. Okay. It's not really pulling, like, I think the belt is just slipping on here. Yeah, I want to get a dual belt. Dang it, we're going to have to push this thing back up the driveway because this just isn't going anywhere because we don't have enough tension on here. So I'm going to have to make some adjustments and then we'll give it another shot. I don't want to wipe this belt out. Alright, I tightened that belt up and let's hope it works. We'll see. I'm not going to take it all the way down the driveway until I can tell if it's actually pulling or not, because I don't want to push it back up. Yeah, not great. Oh, come on. Okay, brake works good. Good. Go a little downhill here. Well, guys, that's a bit of a letdown. We are smoking the belt. We just don't have enough belt tension. Let's get it back up to the shop and we'll talk about where we're going next with this thing. Exhaust, definitely. That exhaust is blowing directly into your crotch, into my crotch. All right, guys, that was a huge letdown. It started moving on the downhill, but there's just not enough grip over here. I probably should have brake cleaned those. They have like some penetrating oil on them. But regardless, it's just not going to pull my weight the way it is. So I have two new pulleys coming, both 2.5 inch diameter. These are more like a 2-inch diameter. That bearing is bad in there. We got to replace that. So it'll have a double pulley setup, and then we're going to create some sort of a motor tensioning device that actually can push the motor forward, and we can get some legit tension on these. Because even like I did my best. I pulled that thing back. I had a pry bar in there. I tried to scoot it back. I did scoot it back some, but it's just not working. So We got a bunch more to do with this thing. I'm going to cut this whole bottom plate, this whole janky plate with all these big holes in it. That whole thing's going. Motor's going to get shifted a little bit this way. The jack shaft's going to get shifted a little bit that way. A bunch of adjustments, a new exhaust, Mikuni carburetor. I'm going to take and re-weld this whole frame. So there's a bunch. There's a tank in the works. So a ton of work's going to come on this. It really sucks. I really just wanted to ride it as it is and see how it is. And, you know, I did get to, you know, go 2 miles an hour or 3 miles an hour on it. And it's not that bad. It's not as bad as I thought it would be. But, I mean, we didn't really even get any speed out of it. So, faster it goes, too, this thing will be pretty steady. So we got tons of work to do on this. It's going to get way better. It sucks that I didn't get to really tool around on it like I thought I was going to be able to, but, you know, this is stage one. That whole back wheel brake setup was a lot of work. The brakes, yeah, the making the new brake pedal and everything was a huge amount of work, but we're going to continue on this, so please smash that like button for me, hit the subscribe, drop a comment below. Smash the bell if you want to get notified of future videos coming about this project and lots of other projects that we have going on the channel. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we will catch you on the next one.